89 albums, copious amounts of tea, a pile of unwanted softwood. But finally, Burford Road has risen from the ashes. If you'd seen my previous video, you'd know I've had issues with derailing, points and wiring, curves, and other pitfalls. I tried to get on with the layout, but it just wasn't working. I needed a plan. To have a layout more suited, I needed to look at my stock collection. The English Electric Type 4 Class 50. The Brush Type 4 Class 47. The Metro Camel Class 101 DMU. And the Sulzer Type 3 Class 33. These examples represent the type of trains I want to run. Parcel trains, commuter trains, running backwards and forwards to the capital, alongside engineering trains, aggregate trains. The advantage of this stock is it's seen both western turf and southern turf, so it leaves plenty of scope for the type of layout I can model, but I will always lean towards the western. But there's an elephant in the room. This is the British Railways Class 423, or more commonly known as the 4VEP. Prototype capable of 90 miles per hour, powered by the 750 volt DC current from the third rail, and they never ran on the Great Western Main Line. And it's not the only model of third rail stock I own. There's only really one suitable location for this layout: London. The trouble with London is it's big, and its terminating stations are big. This could be a problem. I looked at various track plans, drawing influence from T.J. Freeze's work. And whilst I looked through plans, I looked through books for ideas. It was when I was looking through this book, 80 Spotting Days, Out of the Ashes, that I came across the photo that would influence my decision. A rather dull and probably uninteresting photo, but something that might just work. It was a photo of a Class 115 sitting outside Marylebone Station. And then it hit me. Marylebone is essentially the famous track plan minories, something I always wanted to try. The inspiration was there. I dug out other books and other source material. Videos on YouTube of steam workings in the 80s became invaluable sources of information. Photos giving inspirational ideas of what I could model and build. I used Google Earth and Street View to study the area. I took inspiration from parts of the line, such as the section between Hampstead and St John's Wood tunnels, where the former Great Central runs over the West Coast Main Line. I wanted to enable the mixture of southern and western, and if possible, underground running. This led me to look at the surrounding lines, like the North London line and the West London line. I looked into the latter's history, learning that in its early days the Great Western used the line to run into Victoria Station. I felt a feasible layout could be established. Marylebone's other inspiration was its diesel DMU depot, housed in the old carriage shed. I decided to take all the inspirational elements and combine them with a track plan that had taken my interest. The result was this. And this is my plan. An end-to-end layout with the addition of return loops to turn loco hauled trains round. The layout consists of a terminus station, a diesel DMU depot, a freight yard, southern running lines on a lower level, and a freight line to run round. One sacrifice I had to make in the planning stage was the shortening of HSTs to 6 carriages. Although I intend to run the HSTs round on what is labelled as the South London line, passing by as cross-country runs. That way they can be run at a more suitable length. Closer look at the plan, and you can see the terminus station. Just above it is what I've labelled the South London branch. This will allow freight trains and cross-country trains to travel around the layout and avoid the terminating station. Next we have the DMU depot. This sits above what will be the southern region lines, and ideally an addition of an underground line going into a bay platform. It rounds the corner and heads off towards the suburban scene. The main lines will then come out of the suburban scene on a sloping gradient as they work their way down towards the fiddle yard. In front of that will be a freight yard, possibly a stone terminal or cement terminal. The main lines will then go onto a non-scenic lifting flap in front of the door, under the terminus station, where the line can either continue towards the fiddle yard or turn off and join the southern region lines. As it's rather a grand plan, I intend to build the layout in phases. The first phase is what you see coloured on the track plan, the station and DMU depot, running under the suburban scene and then joining a temporary fiddle yard. The layout will also be a semi-permanent affair with the ability to take it down if I ever move house. The baseboards will be built with 9mm ply. I tried to reuse much of the wood as I could from the previous layout. The boards are built, constructed together and currently sit on the old softwood frame of the previous layout, but in time they will be taken down and a new frame installed underneath. With the boards in place, I moved on to track laying. I'd used the same track I previously used on the other layout, Pico Code 75 along with Bullhead Code 75. The track would sit on a 2mm cork base. I like to use these rolls and cut them into strips of 32mm. You can get about 8 strips and a spare half, which is quite useful for curves. As you'll only get 1 strip from every roll for a curve, the other way of making them is to take a 32mm strip, mark its centre, and then cut it down the middle. Its 2 halves are then thin enough to be manipulated to produce a curve. Whilst laying the track, I discovered what one of the issues was with my previous layout. I'd cut the webbing as demonstrated here, which allowed the sleepers to move. This prevented the tie bar moving properly and was causing derailments to some of my wagons. I resolved the issue by supergluing the sleepers back in place. With this issue resolved, I continued on with track laying. As you can see here, I'm laying some points, and although I cannot claim to be an expert, I will talk you through how I wire my points up.
The majority of points I've purchased for the layout have come packaged like this. This is the sort of new Pico packaging style, and it's the new type of point which Pico have designed so that you can switch the polarity with either the point blades or with a simple modification, removing these 2 wires in the back and then just adding a wire connected to use your point motor to control the power to the frog. You can use a polarity switch rather than relying on the point blades. The small wire that I picked up came from A&H Models in Brackley, and it came in this style packaging. This is for the diamond. I couldn't find the box for the Y, but you get the idea. These points are slightly older and need a little bit more adapting to suit electro frog control via the point motor. And to do this, you need to make a cut to isolate the frog from these rails here, so that the point blade is no longer controlling the power to the frog. And again, you can just add a switch to you power the frog. this way. So that's what I've done with this set of points here.
And why am I points that? By bonding the rails. Adding the dropper wires. And finally an additional wire to the frog wire. The drill holes are marked up where the wires are. And the point is semi-installed. A pilot hole is then drilled through the tie bar to mark the position to drill in a larger 10mm hole. The point is then glued down and weighted in place. Those of you that saw my video, The Trouble with Building Burford Road, know that curves were one of the biggest problems I had in the layout. I made a mistake of taking third radius set track curves and using it as a template, which didn't help with the nature of the layout, causing numerous derailments on the corners. I decided to do a bit more research and find a better way of laying the track. I came across a YouTuber, I think he's Australian, probably turned out to be from New Zealand now, and I've severely offended him, by the name of Terry Mercer. He done a video about transition curves and a very simple way of making a template for your curve building. The idea simply is to get a piece of cardboard, and for this it's a 21 inch curve, which is essentially third radius, but the way it's built is mark 21 inches across here and then 21 on here, numbering up 1 to 21 this way and 1 to 21 this way. You then take a ruler and connect 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4, etc. Eventually the lines will produce a curve. And the difference it is to set track is that it is, as its name suggests, a transition curve. And the train will actually come into a slightly more shallow curve before it gets tighter in the middle and then becomes shallow again. As demonstrated, well, if they didn't uncouple, it works quite nicely. I used the template to build the inner curve and then used various other methods to build the outer curves in the same style. With a transition curve laid, I then took my largest piece of rolling stock, a Mark III coach, attached a pencil to it and ran it on the curve to mark out where to avoid for the next curve. Using the pencil mark, I then roughly lay the next curve, run the Mark III on it with a pencil attached to the middle and make sure that the lines didn't cross over where the possibilities of the coaches hitting could occur. Using the pencil lines, I then lay a piece of track and roughly hold in position and mark out the new line. Using the Mark III coaches as guides to make sure there was enough clearance. I then glue down the cork, which, as demonstrated in the previous clip, is cut in half to make it easier to put around the curve. Once that's dried, the track has its droppers attached and is glued down. I always prefer to glue track rather than use nails, and then the track is then weighted down. As I wanted the layout to be semi-permanent, I used copper cad sleepers at the joints. I'll then later cut the track, and this will allow me to take the boards apart for wiring so that I can turn them upside down, and in the future take the layout apart if a house move occurs. So this is the layout as it stands so far. The track's down on the scenic boards for the station and the depot, but I still need to build the fiddle yard, wire the boards and build a proper frame for the layout to sit on. But all in good time. It's taken 3 months so far, so this isn't going to be a quick finish. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you are interested in seeing how the layout progresses, then please subscribe, and I hope to talk to you again in the future. Until then, cheerio.